if you tell me today we are heading to our 100th GP, that's quite amazing, because it seems to be still so short. We are still talking about the newcomers. We have been well known for, I would say, a very strong off-road brand, but like the business side on the off-road side was coming better and better and stronger. There was a certain moment when the company decided also to build street bikes, and next steps they were quite logical, because if Ready to Race was working on the off-road side, that we go racing strongly on the front end in the World Championship, and this was respected by our customers, and they bought our bikes with the Ready to Race philosophy. There was no question that if we want to sell street bikes successfully in the future, we have to go road racing and go into the competition. First of all, to learn how to build proper street bikes, but also to get the credibility from our customers that we can build a street bike. So that there was a no-brainer, I would say, why we went into road racing. If we go back to 2012, that's kind of emotional, because it was my first road racing project. Before, I was the clear off-roader, the motocross guy, the former motocross rider, and I was not involved really deeply into the road race activities we had from 2003 to 2008. But there was a financial crisis in between. The company got heavily restructured to survive these stormy days. But I would say we came out very, very strong from that crisis, and we never stopped racing. So that was the period when we turned around, I would say, the motocross segment, the US racing segment, where we stepped in. We did many good steps. We started to have really successful racing results and won our first important World Championships. But then going into 2012, that was an adventure, because I got asked to be involved, to lead the off-road, the road race project with Moto3, and before we worked with external people to make road racing happen. And when we started that project, it was one big wish and one basic decision: doing everything in-house, using WP suspension, using a tubular frame with our own production capability, and yeah, then people thought, okay, this will be strange stepping into a new class with a completely different chassis concept, with their own suspension and building an own engine. And yeah, we won the championship in the first year. So this was an amazing decision to stick to it, to say, let's build a KTM, a real KTM, built here in Mattighofen. And I think you didn't find a handful of people who gave us the credit, or who thought we can win a championship with this project and this bike. We won in the first year, and this was the step into road racing new, I would say. And even that's where we put the first brick down for what we have today, which is our MotoGP project. Because looking back, I mean, it was not planned in these days, but Wolfgang Felber, our chassis head guy, or Sebastian Risi, our technical director now in MotoGP, they were two very important guys in that 2012 project. So the foundation we did in these days was also later the basic to have at least a couple of road racing guys in-house, where we could build on a MotoGP project. So it was a very strong, a very good, and a very important decision to say, we go road racing, but we do it from here with our people from this building. Yeah, I mean, there was a little MotoGP adventure in 2004, and but we burned our fingers heavily because we were just not ready as a company size and power and partnerships to do that step. So we had to stop that project again very shortly later. So I think nobody ever in the whole company was brave enough to use the word MotoGP class or project. So we just went on racing everything. But of course, it was true. In the meantime, we won major championships like an MX1 Motocross World Championship. A Supercross world title was in-house. I mean, there were milestones and dreams like becoming a Supercross champion in USA. This was, I think, 2010 still unreachable, and 5 years later it was already a reality, since we changed a lot there in our structure and got better people on board. But then, yeah, there was that one evening when Hubert said, "Hey guys," Kini was also on that famous table, and said, "Yeah, we won every championship now we entered, and there is now one important championship left, and we should go MotoGP." And but that was a moment where we said, "Wow, well, I mean, the company is now way stronger, way bigger, more powerful. Our R&D department developed in the meantime already fantastic road bikes for the customers. There is more knowledge in the house, but still missing, of course, a lot for MotoGP." And we said, "Okay, let's give it a try and ask Mr. Piero what he thinks about it." By surprise, he said, "Hey guys, if you don't make us a huge negative campaign or marketing disaster, why not?" And we were like all shocked. Okay, what does it mean? And yeah, that was a very special, emotional evening. And based on that talk, we decided next morning to step into MotoGP. So there was not a big lead time and not many presentations. There was just a couple of brave guys who said, "Okay, let's do it." And yeah, that was the beginning of the MotoGP project. MotoGP is very, very difficult, and I mean, everybody who follows the class a bit knows what I'm talking about with the difficulty and just races from last year to this year, they become again almost 1 second faster per lap, and you need to bring that second from last year, from already a very high standard, but then somebody else finds 1.2 seconds, and you're still not winning, even if you make such a progress on your bike. And we won, I cannot tell you exactly, but I think we won in total already more than 250 World Championship titles when we stepped into MotoGP. So if we would fail completely in MotoGP, this would mean all these other championships were maybe easy, but a Dakar win is not easy. A Motocross World Championship, a Supercross Championship, any World Championship is the highest level, and you need fantastic engineers to build a bike, great teams, structures, people, and at the end, our heroes, the riders, to bring it to a world title. There's not one easy World Championship, but if you go then to play with the big boys in the big class and you fail, means, okay, you can do all these other things, but you cannot do it in the top class. So, I mean, the first GP win, or having now 6 GP wins in the project, gives us, I would say, a little release, or like also a stamp to say, yeah, we also could do it in the premier class of the motorcycle racing world. But there was the risk to destroy a lot with that project. I mean, and you cannot do many things wrong to be just last every weekend in that class, because sometimes first to 20th position is everything in 1 second. So if you don't bring that 1 second every year, or for us, we stepped into the class with 3.5 seconds gap per lap to the top guys. So at the end, you need to find these 3.5 seconds and come closer to them, but they find another second every year. So you need to find the old gap, and there is a new gap every day. So you need to develop with an incredible speed, not to be the big loser in that class. And at the moment, I can tell you there is not one bad bike and not one bad rider in that whole MotoGP category. It's a very high level. But yeah, we enjoy it, and we are really super proud and happy to be there. if you tell me today we are heading to our 100th GP, that's quite amazing, because it seems to be still so short. We are still talking about the newcomers, which is not true anymore. After 100 GPs, we are part of that show, and it was an intense journey. And the 100 GPs, they gave us a lot of emotions, good ones, bad ones, tears for losing, tears for winning. So yeah, it was a journey, I can tell you. Yeah, you go there, and then your first goal is to have a MotoGP bike in house. You have nothing when we started the project. If we go now motocross racing, we can build on 50 years of history, and we can go over to the shop and buy a motocross bike. You start already on that level, and then you make a race bike for your top rider individually from that level. If you go racing MotoGP, you have a white piece of paper and nothing. Not one bolt, not a swing arm, not an electronics, not a wheel, not a brake, nothing. So suspension, and also we have that load on ourselves that we need to build our own suspension through WP. So it's quite demanding to make it from a white piece of paper, and then you want to have your first bike. You need a lead time of more than a year to build that one and first motorcycle. But while you have to build that first motorcycle, you need to form a team and bring around 100 people on board, build trucks, build a workshop. And so that first target is just to be on the track with a MotoGP bike. The second target is to go to that first race. And from there, I would say that first ever MotoGP point, that is like a target. The idea is say, okay, everything else before is just working, and you don't need to look left and right until you make your first single MotoGP point, because then you are on the list. Then that means you have been in the top 15, number 15, and once you have been 15th, the next target must be to become 14th. So we were not really dreaming of let's talk about a world title or let's talk about winning. We took it step by step. So I would say the first huge milestone was our first World Championship point in the MotoGP class. I remember that, like, we came in and people gave us a lot of credit and respect and said, wow, they made a proper project. I mean, there have been a new look around here, these new facilities, new trucks. They saw which people we hired. You found basically only first-class people, well known before from the paddock. In the background, you never know these people who built the bikes actually, because also you don't see them from the other manufacturers somewhere in the paddock. So I think we got a lot of credit that we really did it properly and not something in between. It was an all-in project. We got so many positive comments, and the press and the friends and the fans. Everybody was excited how good we did it. I think that was a bit too nice, too much glory for just we did our job. So I would say then the first steps went quite quick. We knocked down the lap times quite quick. So we got a lot of positive feedback in the first 2 years, I would say. Going in the third year, it turned around. People forgot that we are still completely new and everything we touched was for us kind of first time. And then they said, yeah, but now they are already here 2 years. Where are the results? So I felt like getting two nice critics first part of the project. Then people became quite hard on us. The pressure increased also in the company, because of course you hear so long we are going MotoGP, the investment is quite big every year and people wanted to see results. So it was a bit of an up and down that which was, I would say, the pressure after 2 years became stronger. And then there came that first win, which gave us a big release, or at least a proof we can do it. Because there was huge doubt, can a tubular frame ever win a MotoGP race? Can a bike set up with WP suspension ever win a GP race? But MotoGP against the big five factories. And that was all proven, and that gave us, of course, also some, we didn't need motivation. I wanted to say motivation, but we never needed motivation. Every day we woke up, we were pushing like crazy, but it confirmed some things, that it's possible. And in every class we entered, if it was motocross, supercross, enduro rally, every time we came, they said it will not be possible to win with a tubular frame and with WP suspension. And we had also that negative front headwind. We always had to brake, but we did it and we won the championships. So in MotoGP we didn't win a championship, but I think nobody is doubting the tubular frame or our suspension, because we won in the meantime 6 races. So yeah, it was a bit up and down, a bumpy road, but it never stops in that class. The road stays bumpy, and to have consistent results, it will always be tough in that class. We are absolutely hungry for more. So it's clear. We went so far, we went so deep. We give everything we have to win that MotoGP championship one day. And 6 is, yeah, that's what we have on paper. That's proven. 6 wins, 6 places in a championship. But from here it gets tough. And but the simple answer, yes, we want more. One thing is very important in racing, to be honest with yourself and with your rider and with your team, like not to hide, the bike is not so bad, but maybe the rider was still not good enough, or like it was not the bike failure, it was whatever, something else. Don't invent stories, just be honest. If the bike is not there, work harder to make it better. And if you don't stop to work on that, you come just closer and closer and closer, and one day you can win races. And yeah, the learning was that it's also the same in that category. It's the human power at the end of the day which makes the race results. The rest is machinery, but without the human power, nothing is moving. And you need to create a team and be a strong group of friends, and then you can succeed. You can plan, create, buy, then it's a matter of budget and manpower and to bring it in. But then there are some things where you don't get a shortcut. I mean, there is the experience you need for yourself, your bike, all your people, the riders, growing together with the riders in the class. I would say still for some things you need a bit of time and you need to get experience and learn. And then if you think you have this track covered, in dry condition, next time there is rain. So you need to be ready and get the experience for that bike and your riders on that track with the rain and higher temperature, lower temperature, more grip, less grip. So I mean, I still think you need a lot of experience in that class finally to succeed. Yeah, like on a stronger base, more regularly. If you take now all the results, Friday practice, Saturday practice, Sunday race results, the low point of our project is Saturday afternoon when it comes down to that one lap in qualifying. That's always our worst result, but that's the start position for Sunday. So we don't know what is still missing to make that happen. So we have to learn a lot still from that side. I mean, if I told you before we couldn't learn, I mean, we still need to learn every day about how to race faster and how to build that MotoGP bike faster. And yeah, we have to still figure out some things to make it more clear, to get out there and be always around the podium. I mean, looking back to the 2020 season, coming out of the Corona gap, we have been, I would say, closer to race win and podiums more consistent than right now. So the next target is again to be a bit more consistent into the top 5, to attack clearly more regularly the podium. I'm for sure we are not in a position at the moment to talk about winning the title. Our next goal must be more consistent in the top 5, more often a visitor on the podium, and not just with one rider but also with 2 riders. So yeah, still many targets and a lot of work to do.